Bedtime stories for kids. Stories for meditation and mindfulness to help children and toddlers feel calm and fall asleep fast. Written by Marissa Nobel. Narrated by Melanie Hench. Dinosaurs. This section of the book is focused on dinosaurs. Children love dinosaurs because they are ancient beings that lived when the world was natural and untamed. Dinosaurs first appeared in the Triassic period, which was approximately 240 million years ago. Dinosaurs lived for 40 million years until the late Jurassic era. There is much research still being done on dinosaurs. Researchers have discovered that some dinosaurs may have evolved into birds, while others did not. There are over 10,000 different species of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs were first discovered in the early 1800s with the discovery of the Megalosaurus and the iguanodon. The Tyrannosaurus was not discovered until the early 1900s, and that dinosaur still remains popular today. Movies like Jurassic Park and others have constantly renewed interest in the study of dinosaurs, and children love to learn about this scientific discovery. Dinosaurs in the Bed. This is the story of a boy named Drew who gets to escape from a scary storm with the help of a group of playful dinosaurs and a backpack filled with supplies. This is a great story to play to your child when they are afraid of a storm. It will help them to process their feelings about the weather and their feelings of bravery. The story is imaginative and places imagination as one of the key tools for anyone to use when they are scared. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Drew. Drew was in his bed and was scared. There was a storm going on outside. He was wondering when the storm was going to end. His mother said that the storm would pass over their town quickly and that he should get some sleep. Unfortunately, he couldn't get any sleep because of the storm. Drew kept listening to the tick-tock of the clock. The night seemed to go on forever. Every minute the storm raged on felt like hours and hours to him. He could hear the crashing sound of the thunder outside, and the flash of the lightning made him duck under his covers, scared. Sometimes the thunder was so loud it would make his windows shake. He wondered if he should go to his parents' room, but he was trying to be a big, brave boy. He felt that big, brave boys wouldn't crawl into their parents' beds because they were afraid of the stormy weather outside. His dad had even helped him to prepare for the weather in case the storm lasted all night. They had filled a backpack with supplies, games, and toys. He had even snuck some comic books into the bag when his father wasn't looking. The backpack was now hidden under the blankets with him. He clutched on tightly to his panda bear that he had owned since he was a very young boy. His mother made sure that Drew had some goodies near his bed. He had a bag of popcorn and some chips to eat in case he got hungry and didn't want to wait for the morning. His mother had told him that sometimes a snack makes her less scared. He remembered back to the time that his family had gone camping. Even though it was only just last weekend, it seemed like it was so far away. He was supposed to be a brave boy that had camping experience. He felt like campers shouldn't be scared of a little storm, but the storm raged on outside. In his bed, he felt something touch his toes. Then he heard a voice. It whispered under the covers. "Ouch, that hurt." But the noise was drowned out by the noises from outside. Drew looked out the window, but it was dark, and the storm clouds in the sky blocked out the stars from the sky. The sound of thunder and the flashes of lightning stopped for just long enough for Drew to think to himself, What was that noise from under the covers? He rifled through his backpack looking for his flashlight. He couldn't find it. He must have forgotten to pack it when he was trying desperately to hide comic books in his pack. He freaked out for a second, and then remembered that he had left it on the dresser in his room. He would be scared to get out of the bed during the storm, but knew that the flashlight would help things be less scary. He ran over to the dresser and grabbed the flashlight. Just then, the crash of thunder was heard from outside and a flash of lightning, and without any haste, Drew ran and jumped back into bed. He forced his feet into the bed down at the bottom of the sheets, and there he felt something rough and sharp at his toes. It seemed to be crawling around his ankles. "What's in my bed?" he wondered out loud. He knew that there was something in his bed, so he peeked inside. Without the flashlight, he could barely make anything out. It was so black under the covers, almost as black as the sky looked outside. However, he did see some tiny little spots that looked like eyes. He heard a roar come from behind one of his legs. Drew was so scared, so he chewed on his thumbnail. But then he had a thought and remembered that he had the flashlight. He looked under the covers for the sound. In his bed was a bunch of little tiny dinosaurs. But dinosaurs were big and extinct, he thought to himself. But obviously he was wrong, because there it was, a tiny little stegosaurus. It was eating one of his rippled potato chips from one of the bags he had opened, hoping that the snack would help him feel less afraid, as his mother suggested. Drew was confused, but then he said, "Get out of here!" The animal began to say something, and then he heard more noises. He used the flashlight to look around underneath his covers. He saw more shadows and looked for them. First, he saw a triceratops, then a pterodactyl, and then a Tyrannosaurus rex. Drew wondered how many tiny dinosaurs there were in his bed with him. Drew wanted to run away. He was scared, but also a little curious. He wondered how there were so many dinosaurs in his bed and where they had come from. He looked under his bed with his flashlight and thought he could see for miles. He thought about hiding, but then thought that maybe he should explore this grand land under the covers. It looked like a different world under his covers, and he was frozen in place with amazement. He felt his heart beating over and over again. Then he felt a tingle, as if a lightning had zapped his blanket. He could see the lightning in the sky of the blanket sky. He saw the animals chasing each other. He saw an Apatosaurus chasing a Stegosaurus. He wondered what on earth was going on. The animals were playing with each other, it seemed. At least that's what Drew thought, because plant eaters were chasing meat eaters. Suddenly, a big Brachiosaurus began to run towards Drew. He was scared for a minute, but then he remembered that long-necked dinosaurs like the Brachiosaur were plant eaters, and there was no way he would hurt him. But Drew didn't want to take any chances. He pulled a fire truck out of his backpack, and it grew to a tremendous size. Drew was able to jump into the front seat and turn on the siren, but the sound hurt his ears. Dinosaurs began to follow him in the truck, first a Brontosaurus and also a Diplodocus, in addition to the Brachiosaurus that was following him. But they didn't want to hurt him. They were acting just like big friendly dogs that wanted to play. But Drew was scared he might be crushed by their big dinosaur feet. He gave the truck some gas and it sped forward. He followed a path under the bed, and it soon led to a forest. Before he got to the forest, he stepped on the brake and parked. He put on his new sneakers from his backpack and got out of the truck. He began to run away, blowing a whistle that was also in his backpack. He could hear the trampling of dinosaur feet from behind him. He held onto his panda tightly as he ran. As he ran, the wind blew his hat off his head. He ran through the forest and tried to escape the animals that were chasing him, but he couldn't seem to stay too far in front of him. He was no longer worried about the storm raging outside his bedroom with all this going on deep inside his bed. He wondered how this even happened anyway. He could hear the growls of the dinosaurs and hear the speeding, thumping feet behind him. He reached into his backpack. Inside his pack was a pair of roller skates. He decided to stop for a second and put the skates on. He'd definitely be able to get away from these dinosaurs if he was skating. He was a fast skater. But he didn't get too far before he hit a tree root and fell headfirst into the mud. He quickly took off the skates and began to climb the tree. He wondered where his mom and dad were. He scrambled up the tree trunk. He began to bound from branch to branch until he was almost going to another branch when a brontosaurus came from out of nowhere eating a mouthful of leaves. The brontosaurus looked at him. Suddenly, from out of nowhere, he heard someone calling his name. He couldn't figure out where the sound was coming from. He raced back to the opening of the bed and threw off the blankets. It was his mom and dad. It was morning outside, and the sun was shining out from the window. His panda was still tucked securely under his arm. "I see you found the surprises we left in your bed. We left those toy dinosaurs for you to find in the dark. Figured it would take your mind off of the storm," said his father. "Toys?" Drew said, confused. They had seemed so real in the dark. "And I'm very proud of you for stacking them neatly on your dresser," said his mother. Drew didn't remember placing any dinosaurs on the table. They were all the dinosaurs that he saw in the land underneath his covers. The end. Sweet dreams, little one. The Last Dinosaurs. This story tells the fantastical tale of the last dinosaurs to roam the earth in modern times. The story tells about how sometimes things don't go as they were planned. Children love dinosaurs and will love this story as a quick bedtime story, as it is a short one for nights when a bedtime story is requested, but there isn't much time. There once was a land of lost tropical forests. There was only one mountain in the region. This region was trapped inside of an old volcanic crater system. In this region lived the last group of large dinosaurs. The dinosaurs had survived all the changes of Earth in this system and were now led by a large dinosaur called the Ferocitosaurus. The dinosaurs had been planning for some time now to come out of hiding and dominate the world once more. Ferocitosaurus was a large Tyrannosaurus rex who had decided that they had spent too much time isolated from the rest of the world. So, after a while, and working together, the dinosaurs decided to demolish the walls of the great crater. When the work on the crater was completed, the dinosaurs sharpened their claws and teeth and got ready to terrorize the world once more. Leaving what had been their home for thousands of years was uncomfortable for them. Everything was new and different than they had been used to in the crater that had become their home. They continued on regardless. They were determined to make this work out for them. Eventually, they came to a small town on the top of some mountains. In the town, there were many people who seemed like tiny dots. The dinosaurs had never seen a human being before, and seeing this, they leaped down the mountainside and were ready to destroy anything that would come their way. As they approached the little town, the houses got bigger and bigger. By the time the dinosaurs finally arrived, it turned out that the homes in the town were much bigger than the dinosaurs themselves. A young boy was passing by at that time and saw the dinosaurs and said, "Daddy, I found some tiny dinosaurs. Can we keep them?" The dinosaurs were confused because deep in their crater, They had been the largest animals of all. They didn't think that they should be considered as pets by something so small as a child. The dinosaurs quickly ran away from the small boy and decided that they must have found a town full of giant people and decided to wander on further. Further down the mountain, they saw another town. This town also looked very small from where they were, and so the Ferocitosaurus and his friends decided to continue further down to this town that must be filled with smaller people, because there was no way that there could be giants all over the world. Once they reached the town, they realized that the people were big, just like the last town. Scared, the dinosaurs ran off to hide amongst the big tall trees of the forest. The dinosaurs began to talk amongst themselves to decide what they wanted to do. At first, a wise old brontosaurus began to think about the problem. He began, "Maybe we were once the largest animals in the world, but I think these people are bigger than us. They seem to like us. Maybe we should see if they are kind, and instead of coming out to destroy the world, we can live with them in peace and harmony." The rest of the dinosaurs respected the wise old brontosaurus and decided that they would go with his plan. Not knowing what better to do, or what would further await them down the mountain, they decided to go up to the town where they had encountered the little giant human boy. When they reached the town, people were out looking all over for the dinosaurs that the boy and his dad had seen. Everyone was astonished when the large pack of miniature dinosaurs returned to the town. They had started to think that the boy and his dad had just been imagining things. The people of the town were so excited to see some real living dinosaurs that they threw a big festival and welcomed the dinosaurs into their town. Some of the dinosaurs became pets, and others wandered in the forest outside of the town. Some of the dinosaurs didn't like being smaller than the humans, so they went back to their crater to live out their lives in solitude. And this was how one town became the first and only town in the world to have little living dinosaurs in the modern day. The end. Sweet dreams, little one. Like a long neck. This story is about a dinosaur with the difference from the rest of his pack. He doesn't like that he is different than the rest and is ashamed of his differences. During the course of the story, the dinosaur is able to learn how a difference can help you to become an integral part of a community. The story emphasizes the fact that our differences make us stronger and help people to become useful members of the community in which they live. In the time of the dinosaurs, there was a long-necked dinosaur named Clive. Clive the dinosaur had a neck that was longer than either his mother or father's. Clive was a brontosaurus and was nicknamed Longneck by his friend. This nickname didn't hurt his feelings because he knew his friends loved him. As Clive grew older and his neck grew longer than most of his friends, he started to worry. He didn't like having a neck that was longer than everyone else's. His friend Slim had the second longest neck in the pack, so Clive went to discuss these things with his friend Slim. "Slim, I don't like that my neck is longer than even yours," said Clive. "It's not like there's anything you can do about it," said Slim, being realistic about the problem. "But maybe you can ask the T-Rex if he knows anything. He's really smart and might have a solution to your problem." "I don't know if that would be a good idea. T-Rex helped someone who had too long of a tail once, but their tail ended up being way too small and they couldn't use it to play baseball anymore." "Yeah," said Slim. "Maybe you should just leave it alone and accept yourself as you are." Clive was still very worried. He knew that his other dinosaur friends didn't mind how long his neck was, and that, after all, they each had something that made them different. But he was very self-conscious about being different. He thought about all his friends that were different. His friend Heck had a big stone on the end of his tail. His other friend Rock had a big horn that jutted out of his head. And there was, of course, Jet, who had wings, and he barely had any friends who had wings. While he knew that everyone was different in their own way, he didn't like that others would point and stare at his long neck. He didn't like being different from other dinosaurs, and wished he could just be the same as everyone else. One day, Clive was walking through a deep lagoon looking for some tasty tree leaves to munch on. While he was on his way to the lagoon for the tastiest tree leaves, he was taunted by some of the dinosaurs that were around. They made fun of him for having such a long neck. One velociraptor yelled, "You could reach the moon with that long neck." This joke hurt Clive's feelings a lot. He was very sensitive about the length of his neck. Another dinosaur yelled out, "Hey, Clive, I thought you were a tree with the neck that long." And then all the dinosaurs laughed. Clive's feelings were very hurt because of all this. All these jokes and comments about his neck made him feel sad, and he began to walk deep in the water so that they couldn't see just how long his neck was. He didn't want to be different. He thought of all the different things he could do if he didn't have a long neck. If he didn't have a long neck, he could go into some of the smaller caves that his friends liked to play in. He could swing on hanging vines above the lagoon. He would only ever need one scarf in the winter, but most importantly of all, he would be able to go eat tasty leaves without being made fun of by the other dinosaurs. While he was feeling very sorry for himself, he heard a voice in the distance. It was another dinosaur that was in trouble. "Help! Help!" the voice yelled. "I'm stuck and about to fall down the waterfall." Clive ran towards the waterfall and saw a dinosaur that was stuck high up, holding onto a branch. He wondered how the dinosaur even got up there in the first place. Clive got closer to see what was going on. It was a baby long-necked dinosaur that was stuck in the top of the tree and was slowly losing its grip. "How did you even get up there?" asked Clive. He reached his long neck up all the way to the tree to talk to the little guy. "I kept climbing and climbing. I wanted to be able to see the entire forest, and then I got stuck, and I'm about to fall and hurt myself. Please help me." "How did you figure you would get down?" "I didn't plan that far ahead, but once I fell into the river up here, I used my neck to grab onto this branch, but my neck is all wet, and I'm slipping, and I'm so scared. I don't want to fall and get hurt," said the little long neck. After a second, the little long neck added, "Do you think you could allow me to slide down your neck to safety? It would really help me out." "Why, I didn't even think I could help you out. I forgot that my neck was so long." "Yes, please. Your long neck can really help me out of this problem." "You mean you'd like to use my long neck?" "Yes, I love your long neck. If I had a neck as long as yours, I would go all over the land and help dinosaurs that needed saving from trees and help people get the tastiest leaves from the tippy top of all the trees. I believe the highest leaves are always the tastiest." "Interesting," said Clive, who had never thought of having such a long neck as any kind of advantage. "So, can I slide down now? I'm really scared, and I think I'm about to fall." "Oh, I'm sorry. I got a little distracted. Definitely, please do." Clive moved his head closer to the little dinosaur as best as he could and allowed him to hop on top of his head and slide down his neck and back to the banks of the lagoon. He had never thought his neck would do anything but be a problem for him, and now he was using it to save the life of another dinosaur. He wondered to himself what kind of job he could get with his long neck. He was so happy that he had taken the time to do something to help another dinosaur, and by doing so, he was able to find a way to turn his problem into a solution. After saving the little dinosaur, Clive had pride in his neck. He never tried to hide it anymore. He realized that by being different, he could help other dinosaurs, and that was more important than the mean comments of others. He realized that his differences helped to change the world for the better. The end. Sweet dreams, little one. Time Travel, a Robot, and the Dinosaur Experiment. This story is a fictional tale of how a robot went back in time with a time-traveling machine built by robots. This story gives some historical facts about dinosaurs and also the scientific process. While the story is not true, it helps children to understand how scientists make discoveries and how the scientific process works. There once was a robot that was always looking for dinosaurs in her time travel machine. The robot was built with one objective: to find dinosaurs. In order to find dinosaurs, the robot would have to travel way back in time. She would have to go back millions and millions of years into the past to find dinosaurs. Eventually, the science of the time travel machine was perfected, and the robot was able to go back in time. At first, the time travel machine was only able to go back a few hours, then a few days. Once the scientists that built the robot and the time travel machine had worked out all the problems, they were able to send the machine back in time millions of years, and even have the machine return to the present day. On the first trip back to the time of the dinosaurs, the robot was able to find dinosaurs. The world was drastically different than the world of today. The first time period that the robot traveled to was the Jurassic time period. This time period was over 50 million years ago, and was part of the Mesozoic area, which is the time of the reptiles and dinosaurs. During this time period, there were many dinosaurs, including the Diplodocus, Allosaurus, and Stegosaurus. This time period was best known for the many different plant-eating dinosaurs, known as sauropods. There were lots of different plants during this time period. They had lots of trees, especially the kinds with cones. They even had early pine trees during this time period. There were lots of plants like ginkgo plants and lots of smaller ferns. There was also a lot of algae available for the plant-eating dinosaurs to eat. During the first trip to this time period, the robot wanted to see if it could find a dinosaur nest and get a picture of an egg. The robot had to travel all around the area in order to ensure that it would find a mother dinosaur and her eggs. After searching for a long while for dinosaurs, the robot came into a dinosaur nesting site. Dinosaurs liked to stay in big groups, called herds. They would make beds like a bird's nest and lay their eggs in them. They would do this in groups. In order to find the dinosaur nesting site, the robot had to do a lot of searching. First, she searched in the forest. Unfortunately, the robot didn't find any nesting sites in the forest. The next place that the robot searched was the mountains, but she didn't find any nesting sites in the mountains either. Finally, the robot searched near a really big lake. At the really big lake, she found a herd and followed them. The herd didn't pay any attention to the robot. They were really big dinosaurs, and because they were such big dinosaurs, they didn't pay attention to something so small. The robot was happy because of this, as it made her job easier to do without having to disguise herself or hide from the dinosaurs. Eventually, she followed the dinosaurs to their nesting place. At the nesting spot, she found lots of mother dinosaurs. Some of them already had laid their eggs, and some were preparing nests for eggs that they were going to lay. The robot took lots of pictures to document these things for the scientists that had made her and the time-traveling machine. The robot waited with the dinosaurs and eventually watched some of the eggs hatch. Dinosaur babies hatched just like little birds do. It took a lot of time and patience to wait for the eggs to hatch and open up. The robot was very excited to have finished her mission. When the robot had all the photographs that it could take in its memory banks, it traveled back to the site of the time-traveling machine. It took the robot many days to get back to the location. In order to get back to the time travel machine, the robot had to go on a long journey. The robot traveled back through the mountains. The mountains were hard to travel, especially because on the journey back it had started to rain. When there was too much rain, the robot hid in a cave and waited for the rain to stop. When the rain stopped, the robot was able to get all the way out of the mountains. The next place the robot had to travel through was a big forest. This was easy because there weren't very many dinosaurs in the forest. Sometimes the robot would meet a smaller dinosaur, and the dinosaur would be curious and wanted to see what the robot was and what it was doing. When this happened, the robot would find a way to hide and disguise herself. This helped the robot to make its way through the forest, back to the site of the time travel machine. When the robot got to the time travel machine, the machine was having problems. It took many days and nights of hard work to repair the machine, but because the scientists were smart, they had programmed the robot to know how to fix the machine. When the machine was working again, the robot started the machine up and went back home. The scientists were very happy that their experiment had worked. They used the pictures to increase the information that everyone had about dinosaurs. Scientists had long thought that dinosaurs traveled in herds and had eggs as birds do. The proof that the robot had brought back in the form of pictures helped to increase the knowledge that everyone had about dinosaurs. Because of the success of the time travel experiment, the scientists were happy with the robot and decided to make more time travel experiments back to the time of the dinosaurs. This would help many scientific discoveries in the future. In the future, they would send the robot back with the ability to bring back samples for them to experiment on. The end. Sweet dreams, little one. An Old Clock and the Dinosaurs. This story tells the tale of two boys named Zach and Ben. In this story, they are looking to have an adventure and do not listen to words of caution given by signs. This story teaches children that curiosity can be bad if you do not listen to the rules of signs. It is a fun adventure with some scary moments that may be too much for younger children. There were once two boys. One was named Ben, and the other was named Zach. Ben was 12 years old, and Zach was 10 years old. The two boys were best friends and would always walk to school together. They often talked about going on an adventure together, but the time for that had not yet come. One morning, when Zach and Ben were walking to school, they noticed an old house that they had passed many times before. On the outside of the house, there was yellow tape around it that said things like caution and do not enter. The boys didn't pay attention to the warnings because they wanted to have an adventure, so they decided to explore the rundown old house. Inside the house, they found a very odd-looking old clock. Zach and Ben decided to take the clock with them to their home to show their parents. But before they could take the clock back to their home, Zach pressed a button on the clock. When he pressed the button, there was a flash of light that looked like a rainbow. When the light flashed, they began to fall through the air. They didn't know how this had happened. However, it scared them immediately. They didn't know how long they would be falling, and it seemed like forever. Eventually, they landed softly on a big rock. When the rock started to move, they jumped off and were surprised. It turned out that the rock was a big dinosaur. It was a great big apatosaurus. They didn't know what to think, but they decided that they must have traveled back in time to the Jurassic time period. They searched around for the clock, but could not find it. They realized that they would have to find the clock if they ever wanted to get back to their mothers and fathers and schoolmates again. They looked all around and finally saw something shiny in the distance. They figured that it must be the clock glimmering with the sun. However, it was surrounded by a big pack of allosauruses. When they saw the allosauruses, they realized that they must have been transported back to the time of the Jurassic time period, over 50 million years ago. Because they had paid attention in science class, they knew that allosauruses were meat-eating dinosaurs, and they had to be careful to get to the clock, or they might get eaten for dino dinner. Before they could make their way safely to the pack of the dinosaurs, one of the dinosaurs ate the clock in one big swallow. The clock wasn't harmed, but it would be a long time before they could find it and get back to the present day. They waited and watched the pack of dinosaurs disappear into the rainforest that was near them. Carefully, Zach and Ben decided to follow the pack to see if they could get the clock back eventually. They started down the path and eventually saw footprints of large dinosaurs. The gigantic size of the footprints was larger than any dinosaur they had ever heard of. The boys were scared, but decided to keep going and follow the pack. It was the only chance they had of ever getting home. Down the path, they saw a half-eaten dinosaur. This made them even more afraid. Ben and Zach looked to each other for courage, and that helped them to continue down the path. They were scared about the path that they were on, but knew that they needed to keep going, or else they would never see the modern day again. Because they were scared, they started running down the path towards the Allosaurus. They weren't paying any attention and bumped into a tree trunk. When the tree trunk started to move, they realized that it was not a tree, but the leg of a Supersaurus. The Supersaurus was one of the largest dinosaurs that ever lived in North America. They weren't scared because they had remembered that these types of dinosaurs, while big, only ate plants. Then they got scared because they wondered, what if the dinosaur thought they were plants because they just looked so small compared to him? The boys began to panic and run through the legs of the Supersaurus. The Supersaurus started to chase them, but it was big and slow. Eventually, the boys were able to get away from the large dinosaur and found the pack of Allosauruses that had eaten the clock. While they were still trying to figure out what to do, the Supersaurus showed up, and the Allosaurus pack started to fight it. There was a fierce battle, and during the battle, the Supersaurus hit one of the Allosauruses with his tail. When the tail hit the dinosaur, it made him vomit, and one of the things that it vomited out was the clock. The clock was whole and unbroken. Taking the opportunity because of the confusion due to the battle, the boys carefully made their way to the clock and pushed the button. Just like last time, there was a flash of rainbow light, and this time, instead of falling onto a rock that turned out to be a dinosaur, they ended up back in the abandoned house. When they realized they were back home, they decided they had had enough adventures for a lifetime and instantly regretted not listening to the signs that told them to stay out of the house. The boys placed the clock back where they had found it, being careful not to push any more buttons, and ran out of the house and went to school. They decided that from that day on, they would never enter a place that said "Do not enter" again. The end. Sweet dreams, little one.